Good morning. I was looking at my devotions this morning on in the Daily Bread, on the reading on that comes on my phone from the Daily Bread, and that says we should look at chapters 4, 5, and 6 of Numbers. And then I look at the Bible Gateway Read the Bible in a Year program, which I always thought were identical. And today we're supposed to read chapters 3 and 4. So I'm going to stick with what's in the Daily Bread. So we'll look at chapters 4, 5, and 6 today. Tomorrow is chapters 7 and 8. And at some point in time, those two will probably come back into sync. But anyway, today, in chapters 4, 5, and 6, God continues to give Moses and Aaron instructions. And these instructions here are going to be talking about the care needed and given when it was time to move the tabernacle, when it was time to move from one place to another. Certain divisions, the tribe of Levi were the priests, and Moses and Aaron were both descended from the tribe of Levi, the Levites. And I mean, we hear that terminology even in the New Testament. So God says to Moses and Aaron, take certain families, like it would be the Johnsons or the Smiths or the Joneses or something, but the first family to take is the Kohathites, and separate them from the other Levites. And this is their job when it comes time to move the tabernacle. Their job is, and to count the men in that group for between 30 and 50 years of age. So, I mean, it's a very specific group of people again. And as we go through, it'll tell us how many people that there were in that. And, and then it's, when the camp is set to go, Aaron and his sons will go in and take this down, and these Kohathites will do a certain thing. They'll take a blue cloth and they'll cover this, and they'll very specific. And then it's covered with the blue cloth, and then it's covered with a weatherproof leather, to protect it. Because when it's in the tabernacle, it is protected from the elements. But when they were moving and carrying it on the, when they were going to move the tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant, things would be out in the open more. So especially like the Ark of the Covenant, the altar, the lamp, and those things, God had specific instructions for that and how to do all of these different things that way. So the one family was in charge of doing something else. And then I might have skipped one, but then in verse 21, it's, take a census of the Gershonites, or however you say that name, and of the 30 to 50-year-old men. And this is their task when it's time to move the tabernacle. In verse 29, take the Merarites, you shall enroll them by their clans. So, I mean, it's, of the Maronite clan, there were, Bob Maronite and Joe Maronite, and, there were, I'm just making up names, of course, but, so God was specific in telling Moses and Aaron what to do, and, what each of these clans' responsibility would be when it would come time to move the tabernacle, to take it all down. I mean, back in Exodus, after they got settled, God gave instructions as to the size and everything of building this and what to use. And so now God is telling them when it's time to move, this is what you do. And so, when you get down to verse 47, 48, it says their enrollment was 8,580. 8,580. Don't put that "and" in there. I know better. But so this was the number of men between 30 and 50 years of age that would be in charge of, wrapping and packing and loading and carrying. And if someone else other than these people, got involved or did these things, God wasn't going to be happy. They would be out of order and expelled from camp. And then in chapter 5, it talks more about laws and cases of laws and dealing with a woman caught in adultery. I mean, come on, it's the guys are in there too, and it just, the woman caught in adultery, they bring to Jesus. You know, they didn't bring the guy, but they wanted to bring the woman and stone her to death. But, you know, so here it's, you know, it's very specific. If she's actually done it or not, you know, she goes she goes before the priest. The husband brings her to the priest, and all of these rigmarole, I'll just put it that way, and the bitter waters and stuff, and you know, it's all of that, and confession and restitution and making things right, so that either the woman it's proved that she was, you know, in this adulterous situation or not, depending upon how the bitter water would affect her after she had drank some of it. You know, if she suffered no ill effects, you know, there was no truth to the charge. And if it says if her belly swells and the infant dies, well, then she was guilty. But, you know, so there's just, you know, some of these things that are going on in there, and, you know, and part of it was that the priest would write the curses in writing and put it on something, and then it would end up in the water to make the water bitter, and some of that stuff I'm really glad that we don't pay attention to today. Chapter 6 talks about the laws for a Nazirite. And a Nazirite, I mean, a Nazirite is a person who made a vow to set himself apart for God, consecrate himself to God. And these vows were generally for like 30 days, or maybe as long as 100 days. That was, you know, it wasn't a lifetime expectation. But we find some, you know, like the story of Samson and the story of Samuel, who they were Nazirites. And in the New Testament, I mean, there were Nazirites. John the Baptist was a Nazirite, but also a Nazarene. Nazarene refers to someone from Nazareth. And the followers of Jesus were often called the sects of the Nazarenes and sometimes the Nazirites by the early church, before the terminology Christian came into being. And we have the Church of the Nazarene yet today in our world, and other churches that use that, you know, Nazarene name, and look at that. But a Nazirite was a person who had dedicated himself or was dedicated by mother or father to the service of God. And most of the time it was for a specific number of days. But, you know, in the case of Samson and Samuel, it was, you know, was a much longer term. Yeah, and we'll study both of those people later on. But some of the vows of the Nazirite were that they couldn't drink any alcohol. They couldn't cut their hair, you know, for that length of time. They couldn't be in the presence of a dead body. If somebody, if there was a group of people in the room and one of them happened to die and this Nazirite was there, the Nazirite had to go through a process to become clean again. And it involved, you know, washing and cutting the hair and then beginning to let the hair grow again. And those things are all spelled out in chapter 6. And it's interesting some of what they had to do. The Nazirite shall shave the consecrated head if he's become unclean because of a dead body or something. Take the hair from the consecrated head and put it under the fire. They burn the hair, and you know how that stinks. And the priest shall take the shoulder of the ram and all of this sacrifice again to go through and to then purify this Nazirite again, so that then this Nazirite could be set aside for God. And so I talked about that, Samson and Samuel were Nazirites. John the Baptist was a Nazirite. Jesus also was referred to the Nazirite. And they are the four people in the Bible that I've been able to find, in not a lot of research, but some, that are referred to specifically as Nazirites. Although there were many others that would, for this term of 30 days or 100 days, consecrate, set themselves apart for God, for God's service, and during that time would then follow these rules. And And, you know, in the time of Jesus, there were the Pharisees and the Essenes and the Nazarenes and, you know, all of these different people that came and had a little bit of different traditions within the Jewish community, a little bit of different beliefs. Some didn't believe in resurrection, some did this, some did that. And so there were, even in the early Jewish church, I don't know if I should say at Jesus' time was the early Jewish church, it had been around for quite a while, but in those days there were differences in how they believed and how they practiced and how they worshiped and all of those things. The last thing that happens in chapter 6 is we receive the blessing. You know, and these are the words we hear at the benediction of our worship service so often, or whatever. You know, and I'm just going to read it out of my Bible, and this is the New Revised Standard Version. And in verse 22 of chapter 6, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to Aaron and his sons. Thus you shall bless the Israelites." So this is a blessing right from God. God says, tell Aaron and his sons that this is how you will bless my people. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. And so we usually use the word face. The Lord lift up his face upon you and give you peace, because countenance, I mean, you talk about a countenance to a 7, 8, 9-year-old, or even a 30-year-old a lot of times. I mean, what does that mean, countenance? What's your countenance? Well, it's your face. You know, so may the Lord bless you. And what a wonderful thing to have, the Lord's blessing. May it be richly upon you today.